This is the Matters of Influence podcast, creating awareness and alignment today to become your best self tomorrow. With your hosts, Debbie Frapp and Terry Foster Nowland.
All right. Hello, everybody. We are back, and we got a fun topic today. You guys ready for the title?
Ready.
Danger Zone Matters. The Danger Zone Matters.
The Danger Zone.
We do. We've got a special guest with us, and I have actually known this individual for quite some time. Him and my son are great friends. We're college buddies and still connected today. Just an incredible, I'm going to still call him a young man, and that's only because I compare him to my age. And, just highly successful, has his own law firm, and you're in Miami, correct?
Yep, in Miami.
Yep, Miami, Florida, and it is just an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Maybe this will be the one podcast my son actually listens to.
You better.
Maybe. Here we go. So, Brett Trembly, welcome. So excited to have you, and you are going to be talking to us about the danger zone. You've written a book, but before we talk about that, just tell us a little bit about your background and what you guys are doing. The areas of that you guys practice in, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. So first of all, Debbie and Terry, thank you so much for having me on. It's really an honor, and I'm just excited to chat with you guys today. Look, I grew up in New Mexico, so not too far from you guys, and then went to college there, and that's where Brian and I know each other. Brian, you better be listening. So we're gonna quiz you on this later. And I moved out to Miami for law school and just kind of fell in love with the green and the sun and the water. And I've been here ever since. So going on probably like 16 years now or somewhere in that range, and started my own law firm almost 10 years ago. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, and it's been really fun. So like what you guys do, you coach and you guide and you help people become better versions of themselves. And the coaching industry in such a good way is really growing, because people don't look at it like a luxury anymore, but more like a necessity. So thank you guys for what you're doing. I got a coach in the legal field early on, and that is really what changed my business. I can very comfortably say I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. So for anyone listening that hasn't pulled the trigger to work with you guys, nobody asked me to say this, but you can't see. We have so many blind spots, and you need someone else to point out in a good way, like what you're doing. And one of my biggest things I tell people is how you spend your time. We all get caught up doing so many things we shouldn't be doing, that we should be delegating, and it really prevents us from taking the next step. So look, I give my clients, they're all business clients. We do business law, franchise law, and litigation, meaning going to court. But our goal is to keep our clients out of court, because when you get in a lawsuit, legal fees are so expensive, and usually only the lawyers win. And this is coming from a lawyer who half of our firm is sustained on litigation fees. But we do our best to keep our clients out of court. A lot of times people hire us because they didn't hire us in the first place. So now it's like, oh no, I got to get out of a bad situation. And then we start counseling them. It's a little like legal coaching, like here's how you stay out of court. Here are the things you do. And we just kept seeing the same things over and over and over. And we categorized those and sort of chopped them up, and then found that there's about 5 major categories that cause people to get in trouble. And that's where the book came from. That's a lot of years into a few minutes of the danger zones. We call it the 5 danger zones. And it's really designed to help people avoid a $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 lawsuit that should be easily avoidable with a little bit of preventative legal action.
Wow. Well, if that right there is enough, that people need to pay attention and read the book, right? And identify the danger zones exactly. And we'll talk about where to get that book, but let's go ahead and dive into what some of those danger zones are, and just kind of give us a snapshot of those. Your first one has to do with corporate infrastructure. And I think, part of that is that even if it's a small business, I think that the infrastructure is really important. So talk to us about that danger zone and what you've seen in your practice where people get into trouble.
Yeah. So look, here's where the really fun stuff comes, right? Contracts and quote unquote legal infrastructure. So we wrote this book to try to not be as boring as most legal topics are. And in addition to, we're all just trying to make our way in life and business. Like, we don't have all that time to just sit down and say, let me review all my contracts today. We wrote the book with anecdotes and hopefully some funny stuff. So it's really an easy, short read. I mean, it's probably written in 6th grade English on purpose. But we have to dive in. It's not sexy stuff to talk about. It's not as fun as marketing, but it's important. And corporate infrastructure has to do with how your business is set up. Are you the right type of entity? And do you have an agreement that protects your business? So many businesses implode, meaning you don't go out of business usually from someone that sues you from the outside. It's when the business owners themselves, the partners, they start fighting and they have disagreements. A lot of times you see people come together and one person comes with the money and the other has the idea and they're going to do the work. And then a few years later, because entrepreneurs, you guys know, we don't have a 40-hour work week. We're just on all the time. So somebody's working 60 hours a week and they're only getting half the money, and the person who's not working at all expects half. Well, it doesn't work that way. The best type of arrangement is whoever works gets paid commensurate with that type of work. So if it's a convenience store and you're behind the counter, I mean, you shouldn't be making that much. You should be paying like if you hired someone, and then after the profits are split 50-50. So when you put those things in writing and you agree and you have a proper operating agreement, then the first thing you do is you don't have funny memories, because people just tend to remember things differently, because it's not like you think someone understands something, but they'll never understand exactly what's in your head and vice versa. So you want to reduce everything in writing. Second of all, it prevents disputes. Like, hey, it's right here in writing. This is what we agreed upon. If we want to change the deal, well, let's talk about it. And just getting your operating agreement or your shareholders agreement, if you're a slightly bigger business or corporation, in writing, duties, responsibilities, etc., that will save so many headaches down the road. And for some reason, it's a huge step that people skip. I've tried to change that. It'll never change. A lot of people are going to skip it, but is what it is. That's why it's number one. It's just so fundamental and important.
It's.
Let me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I spoke over you.
No, I was just going to say this is so appropriate. People don't understand that these simple steps of creating these agreements affect everything else that happens in their life, upon death, right? Or illness, or if you've set up a trust, how does this affect what happens to my business and or my shares or money when a life event happens? Right. So it's not just about having an agreement for the business. It's about creating something that affects your future. Would you say that's true, Brett?
That is 100% true. I could go through all the other reasons that you need an operating agreement, but I always say, like, what if your business partner dies? Like, are you going to be business partners with Uncle Rico next? Like, are they married? What, like, do you have to go to probate? You need in writing. And there's things called key man insurance policies and buy-sell agreements. So the business can have insurance, and then it can buy out the partner or the partner's spouse or next of kin who's remaining, and you can write it up. So in one of my other businesses, me and my business partner have an agreement that if one of us passes away, there's going to be a decent chunk of money to our family, plus the family will retain a little bit of equity. But at least the remaining partner's not stuck being a business partner, having to answer to someone else. So that's exactly right, Terry. There's just so many reasons why you need a good agreement up front.
Yeah. Well, and I think people get in business sometimes with people that they like, right? And that, like, hey, we've got this great idea, and they never think about, that side of it. And Terry, you and I have coached people that decide to form a team, whether that be a real estate team or something else, and yet they don't come up with the agreements, and then all of a sudden you've got fighting because it's like, well, what happens to this person? I brought them to the table, and all of those kind of things, which I think I can see why this is number one for you, the number one danger zone.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, what in your experience, Brett, why do people not put something in writing? Is it awareness? Is it What is that?
A lot of, okay, so first of all, you can be in business with someone you like, somebody you know well, right? Thinking that things will never change. The
Mm.
second thing is most people, like, let's say and this has happened a lot. Somebody comes to us and like, I have $5,000 to start a business. You know what I'm telling them? Don't spend 2/3 of that on me and legal fees. Go have proof of concept first. Let's see if your business works because you're going to need some startup capital. And then once you guys know you're going to keep going in the business, then we can do an operating agreement before it gets too late. But that's not the first dollar you should spend. It's one of the first things you should do. But I think most people don't even know if a business is going to work. So you know what? Like, let's just go do it. Let's just get it done and take action. And I'm okay with that. But
Yeah.
you know, within a short amount of time, you've got to put things in writing.
Yep, I think so.
Perfect.
Always in writing. The second danger zone, contracts and leases.
So yeah, so contracts, instead of your internal contracts, these are vendors, these are lease agreements, all of the things that you're signing and putting your name on. And a lot of times with personal guarantees, like in Florida, it's rare to find a commercial lease without a personal guarantee. Not sure if it's the same in Texas. You know, we've got several clients in Texas, but we don't do like their lease agreements because that's more Texas specific.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of ways that, you know, like attorney's fees provisions, venue provisions, there's a lot of things that can catch you in a contract. And when you want to get out of it, it's like, oh man, I'm locked in for another year because I didn't realize I had to give them 90 days notice to get out of this contract. So now if I try to breach or you know, get out of it, there's like another 14 months that they're going to try to charge me for. And there's a lot of things people sign and don't read. And it's so important to have somebody take a quick look. Now, I'll tell you what is frustrating from the consumer standpoint, though. If I'm a business owner, and this happens all the time, like we get emails, hey, can you, like, I just need someone to take a quick look at this contract. Now, I get that. Sometimes it is a quote unquote quick look. A lot of times it's not. And there's a lot of things in there that we need to fix. But for us as a business, it's not a good model. It's not profitable. There's so much back and forth and so much like explaining, and then we have to ask a lot of questions just to know what's going on outside of the contract for people to just reach out and say, hey, can you just look over this contract? Like, I'll pay you $1,000, right, for a few hours. So I get it. That's a friction point that it is hard to alleviate. What we've done, just because a lot of people are like, oh, it's so hard to find a cheap and reasonable attorney. We have a general counsel program where somebody pays us a small retainer, and then whatever they need from there, like we already know their business because we've done the intake, we've gone through the danger zones with them. So now it is very quick work. You know, hey, I need this contract looked at. Well, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours, but now it's easy. Until you have a relationship with a good attorney that you can trust, that can turn around work quickly and do a good job, it's really hard to find. And I think that's why most people skip this stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That would make sense.
When you think about even just some of the contracts that we have, we work with a lot of folks that are independent contractors. And I definitely know sometimes they haven't read it. And when people are wanting to make a change, it's like they look at that and then realize, oh, okay, here's what happens when I break even this independent contractor. So there's all kinds of different type of employment kind of contracts.
Yep. Well, and that kind of dips into the next danger zone, right? Because employment matters, as we call them, but you're talking about your non-disclosure agreements, your non-compete agreements, your non-solicitation agreements, and just your employment contracts, so that everybody knows what they're making and why and what the rules are of the company. There's so many ways for employers to get in trouble now, legitimately or illegitimately. So one of the big rackets in Florida, there's two things. I call it legal extortion. Well, I'll get into the first one in regulatory compliance, I guess. But the second one is wage and hours. So somebody quits a job or leaves and they meet one of these attorneys. I wish, you know, if I even call them that, who convince them like, hey, didn't you work overtime for the past 3 years? And the person's like, what's overtime? Didn't you work like 80 hours a week? Sure I did. Okay, great. Let's sign you up for a lawsuit and let's sue the business owner. The problem is that the business, it's not the former employees or sometimes current employees onus to prove that they worked overtime. It's on the employer to prove that they didn't work that person overtime. So if you don't have timesheets, you're basically SOL. And there's just little things like that that can really get an employer in trouble. Everyone sees the business and thinks the business owner is just, oh, they're making all the money. You know, unless you own a business, you don't understand how expensive it is to run a business, and margins are unfortunately, you know, not that great in most industries. So this one in particular, employees are our best asset, but our biggest headache. And I've got a lot of them, and I love them, but it is what it is. You have to protect yourself from you know, people, and things change, and you can really. I have a good friend out here who I used to use one of his main employees as an example of somebody who's just a go-getter and helps run the company. Like, we need someone like that. She turned around and sued him, and I would have never expected that. And so, you know, we've just seen it all. You have to protect yourself from your employees, and by the way, and them from you. Like we put together fair agreements so that both sides are protected, and that creates a good relationship.
So what would be one piece of advice, like the one thing that you've seen the most, that most, whether it be a small business or anybody that has employers or employees, sorry, they've hired somebody, basically. What's just one tip that you can tell them that they really need to implement?
So if you're in a business where you have a big competitive advantage, you've figured out some process, or I don't know, some way of doing business, you want to put together non-compete agreements with your employees, so they can't just leave and then steal your clients and then start a competing business, basically just replicating what you've done. Now, you can't keep people from competing forever, but you can do a reasonable amount of time. A year will be enforced. 18 months is usually enforced. And then when you get over that, it's sometimes courts, you know, throw it out. There's also proximity, like you can't open a business within this radius, you know, how many miles, but that's important for business owners to protect themselves from that happening, because when you don't, then you tend to have the attitude like, well, why am I going to hire someone when they're just going to leave, you know?
Yeah.
And it ends up not being a great situation. So, and on the other side of things, not signing an agreement that's overbearing. Like we had a guy that was working for a sales company. This sales company didn't have any real proprietary information. I mean, they just stole. It's a famous guy who's really a bad dude. But he steals everything. He's got no trademarks because nothing's his own ideas. And our guy left and started a business, and then was sued. And we settled eventually, but we would have won the lawsuit. But unfortunately, in the lawsuits, it's about the war chest, right? The bigger pockets usually wins, because you could just bleed people out. So on the other side, if you're an independent contractor, because you mentioned independent contractors, or an entrepreneur, or you know you're going to be an entrepreneur, be careful what you sign, because you're about to be an employer, and you don't want to go into something thinking you're going to learn something for a year and then go start your own, and then find out like, oh my gosh, I have to do something else entirely for 18 months because I didn't realize that they slid in this non-competition little paragraph, or like one sentence in the middle of an employment agreement.
Right. Absolutely.
And Brett, that is it my understanding, me being in Oklahoma and, you know, Debbie being in Texas, you being in Florida, states regulate what those independent contractor, like non-competes, right?
Yep.
That's state regulated. Okay.
Almost every state, I think, has a statute on those, or just enough case law that there's a sort of prevailing accepted, so like proximity and duration and how strict you can be with those. And I'll tell you, a lot of states are moving away from enforcing them at all. So you really have to be careful as the employer on how you craft those agreements, making sure they're not too overbearing and overbroad.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great advice.
Well, you mentioned trademark in that, and that's actually your fourth danger zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trademark and intellectual property, which this one, of course, is one that probably impacts both Terry and I. And so talk to us about this one.
Getting a trademark is so simple, and it's really, like legally speaking, inexpensive. You can get a trademark for, $1,200, $1,500. So let's imagine you have Terry's taco stand, right? And you have, you spent all this money, you built out and by the way, so going back to like the contracts issue, the third danger zone, getting into a lease when you're in a franchise and then the build out goes bad and you don't open and the franchisor wants their money and your name's on the lease. Wow. We've seen that so many times, and small business owners go belly up for that reason. It's happened a lot. So, but let's say everything goes well, you open and you don't trademark Terry's Tacos, and then across the street, someone opens up with Terry's Tacos and they just spell your name like one letter differently, or even the exact same. And you do have some common law arguments with a right to the name, but now federally, because trademark is a federal issue, it's first to file, and it's just it's such a simple thing to get. And we have seen some heartbreaking stories where someone's been in business for a long time. Someone else comes in, opens a business and grabs a trademark and then tries to force that smaller business out. We see this a lot in the like brewery distillery. We have a client who has a brewery out here, and the big guys, Budweiser, Coors, they'll create a line of beer to look like a craft beer to confuse the market on purpose. And then even though they're the ones really infringing, they'll sue the smaller guy because they know that they're going to spend all the money in the world. So then you kind of settle, and it's just it can be very frustrating. That's a nasty game. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. What about the intellectual property? Is that something different, or does that come under the trademark?
Intellectual property is the broad term for like copyrights and trademarks. So copyright is like if you produce a work of art or a song, or blogs, you can copyright your blogs, and you do have common law rights to copyrights, but and patents. That's the other thing that's kind of included in intellectual property. Patents are a different animal though. That's a like an invention or a very particular way of doing something, and that is very expensive. We don't do patent work. It's a whole separate bar exam actually to be a patent attorney.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So if you're trademarked, and let's say that you write a book, okay, does that intellectual property then go under the trademark, and each time you write a new book you have to do something different, or does it all go under that heading?
Books are copyrighted. A trademark's for a logo or a name. So let's say that like Trembly Law Firm, for example, someone else tries to open up Trembly Law Firm, we're gonna, if it is the person's last name, which is not that common, we're gonna do our best to enforce our trademark on our name, to not let them use the same name, because the whole purpose of trademarks is to prevent confusion. And I actually did a YouTube video after the Tiger King about why the Tiger King lost the lawsuits and what really happened with the trademarks. And he tried to create something that looked like, I don't know, the crazy tiger lady stuff, and it was a big mess. But it is pretty interesting. It's an interesting world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So our last danger zone, another sexy title. Got to tell you. Compliance and regulation, right?
Just butter me up.
We love them both. Yeah. Our favorite topics.
Let me just bathe in some compliance here. This refers to some of the statutes you have to watch out for. So in South Florida, and I know California, I'm not sure about Texas and Oklahoma, you've got these lawyers running around just like shotgunning lawsuits. They'll find a strip mall and sue every business in the strip mall, and then the owner of the entire thing, and say, you're supposed to have 15 handicap spots and you have 14, or they're supposed to be 10 feet wide and they're 9.5. And if you're a little bit off, then you're probably going to lose the lawsuit, but it should be a quick fix, right? Like, okay, let me fix that. Oh no, now they want their $20,000 in attorney's fees. And we've gone to court arguing like, Judge, you can see that they just copy and paste the exact same lawsuit. They put in someone's name, they file it. That can't be more than a half an hour of paralegal work. Like, give us a break here. And it's really the attorney's fees which get people. So you got to watch out if you have a physical location for being ADA compliant. And the ADA, it's Americans with Disabilities Act, right? A very good law. We should protect people with disabilities for sure. But the way it's being used as a sword to hurt business owners is very sad. One of the other ones is TCPA, the Telephone Compliance Act. That's if you're a business and some marketing company comes like, hey, you have all these customers, we can text them your deals. You can get sued and for a lot of money for abusing text messaging. So those are the main two. Just again, just small things that can be avoided with a little bit of prior planning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was one, you've also mentioned kind of websites as well. And I know that that was one of the areas recently that somebody shared with us around what some of those compliance and regulation items might be for websites. Can you speak to that for just a moment?
Yeah, so I mentioned that lawyers were basically finding somebody with a disability called a tester and going online and just like suing everybody with a physical location. So then what they started doing is saying, well, their website has to be compliant too. So let's just sue people left and right if their website can't be navigated by somebody who can't see. And so, like, is there an easy plugin on your website that somebody could click on and then it can read your website? And the case law that recently came back, it was good for business owners, and it kind of pushed back a little bit on the fact that if you have a physical location and an online website, that if like every word is not perfectly available to be read, because that's a lot of coding. There are some easy plugins you can put on your website, but it's not perfect. So that's basically what was happening. We were seeing a wave of lawsuits being filed to anybody with a website.
Yeah. We heard
wow.
those from a couple of our clients that we have. And so, yeah, it's interesting. All right. So 5 danger zones. So talk to us about where to get your book. And I know that you go through much more detail, Brett, and then any closing or final words that you want to share with our folks today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just go to the danger zones. Go to Amazon and just type in the danger zones. We'll pop up. I think we talked about there's 2 listings, unfortunately, for ours. Just go to the one with 21 ratings, or you'll see the one that has the most action on it. It should be the first one that pops up. And yeah, we listed it at $7.99 paperback, right? It's not expensive. This is not a money maker by any means for us. It definitely costs us more money to get it done and to talk about it and run a few ads than it'll ever bring back to us. This is because we care about entrepreneurs, we care about employers, we care about the business community. Small business owners still employ more than 50% of the American workforce. And in order to keep that up, we need to continue to protect business owners. And there's all these pushes to protect the workers and workers' rights, and workers built the country. And I get all that. And again, you have to have really great employees, but everyone talks about there's no jobs and we're creating, the government pretends like they create jobs, right? But let's make it easier on business. And we're the ones taking the risk. We're the ones putting our money on the line. We're the ones signing leases and personal guarantees and taking the risk. Let's not make it so easy to sue us and just basically bankrupt us, which can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've also got a website, and I think you've got a blog post too, where you've done some really great articles about different topics. Where do we find that at?
TremblyLaw.com. That's, pretty simple. Our blog's fairly easy to find on the front page, and that's where all the information is. And we put up about 4 blogs per month. They're free, and we're trying to get more good free info out to people. We had a ton of stuff up during the pandemic about PPP loans and EIDL loans, and we did our best to put out free information. And I'm happy that people still use that tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's great. That is great.
Terry, any final thoughts or questions?
No, I think, of course, being where I'm at in life and owning a few different businesses and understanding how to create corporations for businesses and working through attorneys here locally on that, it's just so much more complicated than we think opening a business is. I love that you use Terry's taco truck, because if I'm just going to go create a Terry's taco truck business and I think all I need is a truck and some tacos and the meat, maybe a little bit of advertisement, there's so much more to it. And I just want people to hear this and not be afraid of it. I want them to hear it and take it seriously and realize this isn't about today or tomorrow. This is about 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And I love your advice on, getting the business started and then going from there with your agreements. I know most of the clients that we coach have an operating agreement. They have a buy-sell agreement. We're even hearing the non-compete language be a part of that. And boy, the independent contractor status is big in our industry. And I don't know how to stay on top of it. So someone else has to.
Yep.
So that's what I'm hearing from all that.
Got to stay well informed. And I just love your community aspect and really wanting to protect that business owner. And it's how we're all going to stay in business and how we make everything work. So.
Right. And then if you stay in business, we can still employ people so that other people have work and our economy keeps moving. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really enjoyed today, and it was lovely catching up.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You guys too.
All right. We're going to close this out. Here we go.